Okay. All right, I guess we're going to talk about when Dad and I met, Grandpa and I met, and just got home from my mission. I flew from South America to Chicago and stayed in Chicago with my sister Louise for about a week or 3 days, I guess it was. And then we traveled out to Wyoming by car, and we got into Casper it was about 1 o'clock on a Saturday, and so I was really excited to be home and see everybody. And I called all my brothers and say, "Hey, I'm home." And my oldest brother, Scott, was the first one I called because he was the oldest. But anyway, he said, "Rosie, why don't you come over to the church? Gary's being baptized." And so I went. So I said, "Okay." And I said, "Mom, were we going to go to Gary's baptism?" She said, "Yes, but that's not for an hour or so." But anyway, we went over to the church when it was time. And as I was walking in, John happened to be there as a priest. He was taking care of the water, of the, what do you call it, the baptismal font. He was watching the water and the baptismal font that it was filling. And so he saw me come up to walk, and he thought, there's that girl that her picture's over here. And thought, So I walked in, and I walked into it was the Relief Society room, and well, it's really the priesthood room. And I walked into the priesthood room, I guess, where they were having the baptism, and I saw everybody, and it was all my family or people from the ward that I grew up in. Only it wasn't a ward yet. It was still a branch. But anyway, and so there was all these people, though, that I knew, like family. And so I was hugging, and in South America, you give an abrazo and pat each other on the back like that. And so anyway, I was giving everybody hugs and kisses and everything, and going around the room, and John's looking at this, and he's going, and he says to my younger brother Richard, he said, "Who's that girl over there?" And Richard says, "Oh, you haven't met my sister. That's my little sister." And he says, "Rosie, come here." So I went over and said hello, and he said hello, and he said, "Rosie, this is John Baldwin." And I said, "Oh, nice to meet you." And I stuck out my hand. He got a handshake. Everybody else got hugs and kisses. And he goes, "That's it? I get a handshake? Everybody else gets hugs and kisses?"
He's saying, "Hey, you're giving away free hugs and kisses." And
so that's how it all started. And
what was your first impression?
My first impression was, he's a nice guy.
Okay, was he good looking?
Well, I didn't think he was that good looking at the time. I wasn't really into men I wasn't thinking that much because I just come home from a mission where everything was hands off, ladies, you just wait for a while. And so, then we met at Men and Gleaners, they called it. It was young single adults now.
What's it called?
Young Men and Gleaners.
What's a gleaner?
A gleaner is like they about Ruth when she gleaned the fields, and so they it was like, and used to be they had a name for all different age groups, even for young men used to be anything from mission age up, Gleaners used to be anywhere from up to 30, and then they went on to the adult classes. But anyway, it was instead of saying young single adults, they used to say young men and gleaners. And Richard, my brother, happened to be the leader of the young men and gleaners, and men and gleaners. And men and gleaners. And so anyway, we went to church that time. And we got to know each other through Men and Gleaners, and then he asked me out, and I found out that he was getting ready for a mission, and that his papers he was getting his papers ready to go on his mission.
So how
And
old
I
were
said,
you
"Oh."
at this time?
I was 23, and he was just 18, 19. He was 19. He was 19, and I was 23 at the time, and so it was because we're 6 years difference anyway. And so anyway, he said, "Do you want to go out?" And I said, "Okay, I'll tell you what. You get me ready for this Gentile life, and I'll get you ready for the mission field." Well, he helped me get into the Gentile life more than I helped him get into the mission field. But anyway, we had fun, and we had fun that summer, but I noticed that he didn't have much family support. Nobody in his family was active except his brother, who was in Germany at the time in the army, and so his sister, his brothers and sisters had all been baptized, and his mother had been baptized, and his father too, but his father was kind of out of the church. He was living with his father and his stepmother at the time that I met him, and his stepmother smoked like she was a chain smoker, you know.
Whoa.
And so, they ran a motel, and he had a room down, he had a room in the motel where he stayed with them. And he was kind of living on his own, saving his money for them. Oh no, wait, he didn't live with them then. He was living with Uncle Bill.
Yeah.
John's Uncle Bill.
Basement.
In the basement,
Right.
that's right. And so, anyway, he was, I thought, this poor guy, he's got no family support in the church. And I just thought he was nice. So when he went on his mission, I promised to write him and everything. And he came, and by then I had a job at the hospital before he left. I was there when he got his call and everything. And just before I got home, they had organized a youth group going back to Palmyra pageant. And so they all went back to see all the historical church sites and the what do you call it, the Palmyra pageant. And so he went on that trip, and I stayed home and kind of got my life in order again and got a job at the hospital and everything, and I was working at the hospital. And so when he went on his mission,
Where did he go?
he went to California. Well, it was called West. What was your mission name, John? West Spanish American
Oh.
at the time, and then it became Eastern California Mission. And anyway, he worked with the Spanish people in Los Angeles and some other places, and and then he wrote to me, and I wrote to him, and we got so that we were writing back and forth, and he, instead of calling his mother for Mother's Day, he called me. He got permission from his mission president to call me, because I was his mother wasn't writing him. He only got an occasional letter from his mother or his dad. Even though his dad was paying, I think it was $10 a month or $20 a month, and it was fun. But so anyway, I kept him up on the things and everything, and I wrote him and tried to encourage him and everything, and and when I was thinking about bringing Lehia, to the States, I thought, oh my goodness, should I do this and talk to everybody around me? And finally, he called me up for Mother's Day, and I said, hey, listen, I've written about this problem that I have, Lehia coming to the States, and I said, what do you think about it? And he said, well, I think that you'd be good. And I said, are you crazy? Who would marry me with somebody else's kid? And I said, I mean, and a teenager. I mean, she's a teenager anyway. And I said, and she's not even connected with me or anything. What guy would marry me with that responsibility? And he said something that really surprised me because I'd been fasting and praying about this for like 2 or 3 or 4 months by this time. And I said, he said, if a man loves you, he'll love you for who you are and not for your responsibilities. And I thought, that is the best advice that I've got for anybody. And I just felt like that was it. So I said, would you? And he said, well, if things worked out, I think, yeah. And I thought, well, but we hadn't even talked about marriage or anything
You
before
weren't even
that.
dating and you asked if he would marry
Did you
you.
have feelings for him at that time?
Huh?
Did you have feelings for him at that time? Or
Not
was it
that
just
much. I mean, I
flirting?
did have real nice feelings for him, and I liked
Real
him a
nice,
lot
good
because
friends.
we would become really close friends. We built our friendship rather than trying to build a relationship, a love relationship. We built more of a friendship until just before he came home from his mission. But anyway, that's another story.
Oh, hey, that's part of the story.
Mom, that's exactly what happened to you.
Huh?
Never mind. Yeah.
So anyway, then I fasted and prayed about it some more, and then I sent word to Brother Mena. I said, okay, send Lehia. So I had Lehia for a year before he got home, and that's how.
Okay, so what happened when he got home? Well, before he got home. 'Cause this is
Then
the story
just-
of how you met Dad.
Well, this is
I came off my mission and got off the airplane. I had to fight her off at the airport.
no, he didn't. At the airport, he had permission to kiss me at the airport.
So you asked about that?
He asked about that, and when he saw me, he goes, "Hi, how are you?" He gave me the old
But-
handshake,
you
you know.
The nature of the beast.
Yeah, you didn't give her the kiss even though
And
you planned it?
we did love each other by then and everything. So it was kind of like, oh, this is good. This is good. So,
So you started like falling in love while he was on his mission?
because of our friendship growing in the letters and everything, you know. Because I get a letter from him every week, and I send one to him every week, and so
So what,
he
what
saved
is it
all my
about
letters,
him?
and I saved all his letters.
What is it about him that
Do
you
you still
liked?
have them?
Yeah, someplace. One of our boxes.
The history. So what is it about him that you liked?
When you were
I
young?
liked how he liked my family, because my family can be really ornery, you know, my brothers. And I liked how he had a strong testimony of the gospel, and that he was the strongest one of his whole family, that he's in the gospel more than his whole family. And then after he came home, and we talked about marriage and that, first of all, we just kind of dated a couple of times, and then we had the opportunity to go on a temple trip up to Idaho Falls Temple. So we were on the way to Idaho Falls Temple, and while we were in the temple, I kept thinking, he's going to ask me to marry him. I know he's going to ask me to marry him. I thought, what am I going to say when he asks me to marry him? And I thought, ooh, I don't know. I sit there in the temple session thinking of all this, and I'm thinking, and then he didn't ask me, and so I thought, okay, that one's over with. And so anyway, then we were dating some more, and then we decided to go up to Salt Lake to the temple one time, and that's when he asked me he took me into a corner in the celestial room in the Salt Lake Temple and asked me to be his wife, and I thought, okay. but I knew then that was the right time and place, so I said, yeah.
What did he say?
He said, I think we ought to spend our eternity together, or something like that. It was more than it wasn't I love you and I think we ought to do this, and he said, I think we'd be good love you in there. Well, we did say we loved each other, but we didn't even kiss because we were in this slush room. But you know, I said okay.
That's so sweet.
But it was just that's where we. And so every time we go back to the temple after that, or we're gonna go to the Salt Lake Temple, we'd always sit in that sofa in the celestial room, and this is where you asked me to marry you.
That's awesome.
So that's it.
What temple did you get married at?
In the Salt Lake Temple,
Oh, that was
because
so
that was
sweet.
well,
that's the
by the
next
time we
year.
got married, even the Provo Temple hadn't been dedicated. We got married in 71. The Provo Temple was dedicated in 72, and so that was about the only ones around. Was still the Salt Lake and the Idaho Falls. There was 12 temples by that time, but still. So we had chosen the Salt Lake Temple. That's where he was endowed first, and that's where I was endowed first, and so that was kind of our thing. And so